how much effort does awakening take? The most truthful answer to this question would be to say that awakening takes no effort whatsoever. And why is this so? Because if you already are this non-dual awareness inherently, then being that cannot take any effort. Effort would always imply that you are creating something, producing something, that there is some kind of pathway on which you have to travel. But if you already are there, if your being is synonymous with this awake, unbounded openness, then how could you get any closer to it? Trying to get closer would only be a seeming getting away from what you already are. But nevertheless, that's really not the whole story. Because if you are listening to this may be obvious in your experience, but it may also not be obvious. And if it's not obvious, then saying that it takes no effort, that awakening doesn't require anything, would just not be accurate. Because while it's fundamentally true that you already are this awakeness, it may seem like you are not. And this seeming really matters. Because if it's only a kind of conceptual knowing, only an intellectual understanding that your true nature is already free, then that really won't do you much good. It won't really address your suffering. So it has to become clear in your actual experience. And when we acknowledge this fact about our experience, then the most truthful answer here would be to say that awakening does take some effort. It just doesn't take a lot of effort. And that's really the difference. Of course, there are approaches which place a lot of emphasis on discipline and effort and really have this overarching goal of creating a highly focused body-mind which has the capacity for tremendous spiritual insight. And if this is the project we're working on, then of course that's going to take a lot of effort. But the way I like to approach awakening is much more direct than that. Because, like I said in the beginning, the premise here, the background understanding, is that we are already it. So it's not a matter of developing a perfect body-mind, a vehicle for awakening. No, the thing there is to do for this awake true nature, which we already are, is to just recognize itself. And it recognizes itself not by traveling a long, arduous path of meditation and philosophical inquiry. While that may be interesting and useful, what's really needed are just a couple of very attainable steps which allow this true nature of us to recognize itself. So when we are caught in the seeming identification and contraction, then yes, it will seemingly require some amount of effort to let go of this identification, of this fixation, of this contraction. But this small seeming amount of effort is vastly different than struggling for weeks, months, and years to finally get a glimpse of self-realization. What's happening is just that our true nature of this unbounded openness relaxes this grasping it has on an object of our experience. It opens up, looks back or sinks back into itself, and recognizes itself. And the realization is then that we have never really been other than that. That we have never truly been lost, never truly been identified with anything really, fundamentally. And so from the perspective of the body-mind, this short process of awareness opening up and recognizing itself can seem like a bit of an effort. These couple of steps may feel like there is something that's being done to the body-mind. So we don't need to resist these few steps. We're just acknowledging the identification that is present, then opening this up and allowing this awareness to recognize itself. And this is just a matter of a couple of seconds or minutes at the most. And eventually this pathway from ourselves to ourselves is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter and more direct and more effortless. So even this seemingly small amount of effort decreases over time. And sometimes there is a kind of resistance to taking these small steps to recognize our true nature, because we have the sense that even that is too much. We are in this fixated identification and we want this ultimate freedom. But we also understand that anything the mind does will not be ultimate freedom. It will only be relative freedom. And so because of that, we are somewhat hesitant to take these small steps to awakening. So my advice here is to actually allow yourself to make this small effort of opening, looking back and recognizing yourself. It's very easy to do, it's very accessible. It's a bit of an effort, but it's much better than just being caught in identification. And once you're there, there's this immediate glimpse of openness, freedom, relaxation, and wholeness. And over time, that will become the default. And it becomes obvious that the true effort lies in the overlooking of our true nature. And it's only if we're already caught in this overlooking, this efforting mode, that we can use a bit more effort to get out of that. If we're already in it, it's fine to do a bit more to get out of it. But if we are out of it, there's no need to put in more effort, more fixation, more contraction to maintain or realize anything. Because it's already here. And that is the big relief.